Hi, this is right-wing disinformation and propaganda. There's no rioting in LA. The mayor herself said that the protests are overwhelmingly peaceful. They are American citizens peacefully protesting the brutal, violent, illegal actions of ICE in their community. Right, this is straight out of Fox News talking points. I also think it's interesting how many right-wing chuddies have been using this particular talking point, that the protesters are waving their country's flag while burning, I think this probably says cars or the US flag. I don't know what it says after that, it got cut off. This is just so what? So what if people are waving flags of Central and South American countries? It's so weird to me how MAGA are getting their panties in a twist over that. Like, where was your pearl clutching when Patriot Front in Kansas City, Missouri was flying the white supremacy flag? Also, like, speaking of, aren't y'all the ones who desperately defend your right to fly the Confederate flag all over the South, and not just in the South? Somebody here in Portland flies it on the back of his car. Actually, I think he's from Vancouver, Washington, but I see him in Portland fairly often flying the Confederate flag on his big bloated pickup truck with his offset wheels, like he's given his truck with a Hemi a bad BBL. Aren't y'all the ones who vigorously defend your right to fly the Confederate flag, saying, that's my ancestry. That rebel flag represents my history. I got Dixie in my blood. Don't take that away from me. All are the ones desperate to fly the flag of a country that the United States beat in a war. You're clinging to that with all you've got. I imagine being so obsessed with flying the flag of the Confederacy and then having an absolute mentee bee when you see people flying the flags of, like legitimate sovereign nations like Mexico. Imagine being so triggered at seeing Central American flags in a city where 40% of the population is Latino. How fucking cringe can you possibly be? Also, I just want to address this other thing about rioting, because we have seen, these images that Fox News is sharing, like the same 3 images over and over again, where some scooters were supposedly dropped off an overpass onto cop cars and busted the hood and the windshield, and where there have been a couple of vehicles set on fire. I think it's important to remind folks, again, the mayor of Los Angeles has said that these protests are peaceful. They're not at all how right-wing media is portraying them. And it's really easy to take a couple of isolated incidents by a few agitators and try and falsely portray the entire crowd as being that way. I do think it's important to note how at protests like these, there are always going to be folks who try and spoil it for everybody else. There are always going to be folks who have real big feelings, or they believe that destroying property is the most effective way to create change. They're accelerationists, or maybe they're bad actors. And the regime, and also members of the general public who are opposed to what the protesters are doing, members of the general public who are aligned with the regime, are going to use any destruction of property to delegitimize the protesters, try to claim that they are all violent rioters. They are very eager to conflate destruction of property with violence when those are not the same thing. I mean, if you want to talk about violence, I can't show the clips here, but they are on my blue sky. ICE ran over a pedestrian in a hit and run. The LAPD used their horses to trample an unarmed protester on the ground repeatedly. They didn't think anybody was filming, but mounted police, 2 of them, used their horses to trample a downed man. The mayor of LA said that the LAPD were committed to protecting peaceful protesters. So, Mayor, I hope that there is an investigation into that. It's hard for me watching the footage to see how that's something other than a crime, something other than police brutality. And also how it wasn't cruel to make the horses do that. You could tell they were not anxious to stomp all over a man who was down on the ground, but the officers, they made him do it. Anyway, I'm getting on a little bit of a tangent here, but the violence that is happening in LA is being carried out by ICE. It's being carried out by the LAPD. It's not being carried out by the protesters. The human lives that are at risk, the bodies of real people that are being brutalized, that is 100% being done by law enforcement. I think I said in a previous video that I had only seen ICE using those giant batons that look like a pool cue had a baby with a baseball bat, but I have since seen footage of LAPD with them as well. Trying to delegitimize nonviolent protesters by pointing to very isolated incidents of destruction of property is that is the time-honored tradition of the right of the state. And that's one of the reasons that I'm always saying, rioting is not necessarily a good idea. Destruction of property is something that the regime will use to turn public opinion against you, and also to smear all of the nonviolent protesters. We need accuracy when we describe what's happening. And unfortunately, it's hard to get accuracy in the media when burning cars or smashed in windshields are really like titillating and they get a lot of traction. But peaceful protesters who are standing in a line face to face with National Guard or cops or ICE, that doesn't get as much play because it's not as salacious. It's just not as sexy. And so unfortunately, you get a really skewed view of what is happening. I mean, I understand this dude here is completely brainwashed by Fox News. I understand there's no reaching him. We're not going to convert these people. Their deconstruction, accountability, and resulting guilt over the way that they have behaved and believed now, that has to come for them on their own time. But I just want to be really clear that there's not massive riots in LA. The governor and the mayor have both said there is no need for the National Guard, that it is a small contained protest of like overwhelmingly peaceful protesters. And that this whole talking point that the right is using over and over and over again, like they think they have some gotcha here. They think that this is like a valid point that they're making. They think this is some kind of intellectual clapback. Oh my God, they're flying flags of Central American countries in Los Angeles. I don't really understand what coherent point they think they're making or how they think that that is somehow persuading people that the protesters are doing anything wrong. Didn't we have massive protests where people were marching in solidarity with Ukraine and holding up Ukrainian flags? Where was the freak out over that? I mean, we're not going to see that anymore because Trump is deporting 280,000 Ukrainian refugees because that's what Putin wants him to do. I don't really hear any outcry from the right on that, but I digress. Anyway, LA protests, please be informed. Please don't believe the propaganda that is being spread by the right.